and welcome to Chatty AF, the anime feminist podcast. I'm Dee, the managing editor at AniFem. I also run the anime blog, The Josei Next Door, and you can find me on Twitter at Josei Next Door. And I am joined today by fellow AniFem staffers, Caitlin and Vrai.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I am the community manager at AniFem, as well as editing and writing. I write for my own website. I have a heroin problem, and I am the anime reviewer for the Daily Dot. And you can find me on Twitter at altsoon_nodere.
Hey, I'm Vrai. I'm an editor and contributor for Anime Feminist. You can find me on Twitter at WriterVry. If you check my pinned tweet, you can find all the places I freelance, which is a lot of them, or you can find the other podcast I'm on at TrashPod.
And today we're wrapping up our Escaflowne Rewatchalong with episodes 21 through 26. Conclusions have been reached, and we can finally talk without fear of spoilers.
Yes!
But first, a quick recap, because this is Escaflowne, and everything continues to happen so much.
So very much.
So, rundown. Here we go. I thought about putting this in a rhymed couplet format, and then decided I just was too tired for it. Aria and Naria, our cat girls, die of a luck overdose. Folken turns on Zybok. Alan and Hitomi date for like 12 minutes. The gang goes to war, except Dilandau, who is having an identity crisis and trying to eat snails. Hitomi briefly returns to Earth before realizing she wants to be with Vaughn, so she comes back to Gaia. Also, Alan's long-lost sibling returns, and surprise, it's Dilandau! Folken kills Dorenkirk, but dies in the process. Dorenkirk's Force Ghost sets the fate machine in motion, and everyone's wishes become super powerful. But oops, turns out everyone wishes for murder. Womp womp. Vaughn and Alan throw down. Hitomi yells at Vaughn and realizes she loves him. Alan is reunited with his sibling. The war ends. Vaughn and Hitomi get together for like 12 minutes. Everyone's Force Ghosts look on approvingly, and then Hitomi returns to Earth.
The end.
I think those were the main points.
Okay.
The end. Normally this is the part where I ask for like general impressions, but I kind of feel like that's just going to come out organically in the conversation. And also Vrai has been sitting on this for so long.
Oh my God.
So Vrai, just talk about Dilandau.
Dying.
Go.
Just
Hello,
let it
have you
out.
met my son? He's trans as fuck. Yeah, like I said, I watched this series and I was actually able to reverse engineer the exact time period. It was the summer of 2012 because I'd watched The Woman Called Fujiko Mine a couple months earlier. And this time around I realized, oh, Dilandau is just Oscar, and that's part of why I like him so much.
There are definitely similarities there, yep.
So there is so much transcoding in Dilandau's story arc, it actually boggles my mind. Sometimes I sit back and get sad about what kind of character arc he might have had in a series that wasn't so deeply shaped by binary understandings of gender. The fandom was no help whatsoever. Trust me, I immediately went and read all of it and went desperately combing through old fanfics. The Escaflowne fandom of back in the day was not great, so there were one or two, and mostly not very interesting. And none of this is, of course, to say that this is what we would call a good representation. I think by the time this comes out, this actual podcast episode, I'll have written an essay talking about Reclamation and Dilandau and Oscar and Naoto, because I've got some feelings that I need more time than a podcast to put together.
Excellent.
Yes, good. But yeah, Dilandau is not what I would call, yay, good trans representation, because he undergoes forced gender reassignment, which is so extremely, this is the future the liberals want, that I can't. But at the same time, I remain like perennially disappointed by his character arc, because it introduces this thing, and it's magic or whatever, but also this sense of identity and how very clearly gendered roles are on Gaia, and the solution at the end is, we slapped a dress on him, he's fine now. And I'm sorry you don't just have somebody live as a man for over a decade and, well, but we're good now. It's all fine, especially when he's so clearly dissociating, when we see him in the magic sorcerer place earlier, and also all of the problems with the fact that they were using his character to talk about, like, the epitome of capital M masculine and capital F feminine traits, to such that Dilandau is like a tiny ball of murder and toxic masculinity, and Selena is incredibly passive and childlike to a frankly uncomfortable degree, and I would like to spend some time exploring how that person meets in the middle of that and like puts everything back together. By the way, the fandom solution was bullshit 90s multiple personalities fanfic. Boring. And yeah, I have so many feelings of this character arc that was essentially introduced as a twist in the last second, used vaguely for the show's ideas about toxic masculinity, which are mostly good, but they bit off way more than they could chew with this. And anyway, my son.
Your terrible, beautiful son.
I definitely tracked with the idea of like the sort of literal embodiment of like these coded ideas about like masculine aggression and feminine passivity, like within the character itself, which is on the one hand kind of an interesting imagery, but on the other hand really insensitive. So
Yeah.
not super well thought out on the team's part. So Vrai, you agree that it's Dilandau and he, not Selena or not they? Because I'm watching the last few episodes going, because at the end, Dilandau sort of gives up on this, like, aggressive, I don't know, I guess a part of me wondered if we were almost supposed to read it as, like, in the same way Vaughn is, like, this gentle person who gets shoved into forcibly shoved into, like, taking on these, like, toxic masculine roles. If we were supposed to see that with Dilandau.
I feel like...
And this idea of, like, it's okay to be that feminine person again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think with Dilandau, I think they would be completely viable in the same way it would have been with Noriko if that had been explored by a writer with a better grasp on the topic.
Yeah.
I tend to default to he when talking about it just because for ease of understanding. But yeah, if we were talking about, like, what gender identity I think an actually complete arc for that character would go to, I think they would be more appropriate. And I genuinely don't know about, like, because the thing is, I think the series wants us to think that they're Selena again and everything is fine now, but also, who even is Selena? She is a non-character. It's not very satisfying.
I mean, she was taken away, 10 years ago? So, maybe longer.
As a very small girl.
Yeah, and she was very young. Well, if Dilandau's 15,
yeah.
Delina? If Alan's sibling is 15, then Selena was probably taken at, age 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
So, I agree with you. Like, there's a structure that is followed in a lot of Japanese fiction. I don't remember where it started, if it was Akutagawa or if it was further. I think it was further back than that. I'm positive it was further back than that. But it's this idea of, like, start slow, escalate quickly, finish fast. And you see it in a lot of media, and it comes across, I think it's kind of jarring, because I think in a lot of Western films we tend to give more time for the sort of wrap-up conclusion. But because everything, it's like, we get the reunions, we get, like, the big kind of emotional, but we don't get any of the fallout. It's just like, and that's the end of the series. And it's like, but...
Excuse me,
but wait.
There's still quite a bit left to explore here.
And I wonder if that has anything to do with why Japan has such a large transformative fiction culture. I wonder if those are related at all.
It's definitely possible, like, that it kind of encourages the quick endings kind of encourage you to come up with your own, like, conclusions and tie things up after the fact. And I think that's very much the thing with Dilandau. So I am sorry, Vrai, that the fandom has failed you on this.
It sucks
on
so
this
much.
point.
But the fandom produced that beautiful, beautiful Angel Fire website that I linked to you guys to.
I will say there's one good fic that still is extant on AO3 that's about, like, Selena Dilandau kind of trying to settle in. It's not really so much about them trying to find their identity because it's a short fic, but it's about them being ace and Alan not being a shitbag about it, and that was a nice fic. That was
that's
good.
cute.
Yeah.
That's nice.
I guess with Dilandau, their story arc feels the most... Because everybody still has stuff to explore, but they all feel like they've reached a conclusion in some way. Like, Milerna's going to go off and do some stuff, and Alan's going to think about how to be less of a shitbag, except he's not. And that concerns me about how he's going to treat his newly returned sibling. and, Hitomi is going to grow up and Vaughn's going to be a kinder king, but Dilandau gets acted on, has a meltdown, has another different meltdown that puts him in the hands of kinder caretakers, and end of story.
Yeah, he really doesn't get a chance to grow or to explore, which is a shame because he is definitely, I don't want to say he's like one of the more interesting characters in the show, because they're all really good characters, but there are so many opportunities to introduce a complexity to him that never really happened.
Yeah, I think dragging them out of the story for those 6 episodes and then throwing them back in at the very end was a mistake. I think they could have spent those 6 episodes like actually checking in on the character regularly, and the ending, the sort of the ending of like, I have to fight. No, it's okay. You don't have to be this ball of toxic aggression. You can go back to being that gentle person that you actually kind of want to be. I think that could be a really good story, and I don't think they just didn't do it right at all.
Yeah, because I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with like that. It could have been a great opportunity to decouple those traits from their gendered assumptions.
Yeah.
But no, series over. Hitomi went home, and she's having a good time, and I'm glad for her. And then we've introduced this whole new character who is just crucially important and didn't show up until this last batch of episodes.
Are we talking about Jajuka?
Yeah.
The dog that looks a lot like Alan. I just want to point out that's Doggo Alan. And I think that was intentional.
Almost certainly.
Yeah. And then they bring in the fantasy racism again. There's a lot. I think Escaflowne, I still really like it. I think it does very well for as much as they crammed into 26 episodes. I do think it's one of those shows that probably could have benefited from another core, or just a little less stuff happening in the last stretch.
Those rumored 39 episodes
would have been about
that we can neither confirm nor deny.
Because I think we get a lot of these side characters who come in for a couple episodes, and as far as economy of storytelling goes, I think Escaflowne could have been an absolute train wreck, and it isn't. So, like, as far as economy of storytelling goes, it does a serviceable job with as much as it's trying to do. But I think Dilandau gets shortchanged here at the end. I think Jajuka and the whole kind of undercurrent about how beast people are like second-class citizens, I guess.
Yeah.
It keeps popping up as like a background element, but they're always used as vehicles for the non-beast people's character growth, and it's not super well done.
It kind of sucks a little bit.
It's very much background. It's background world building that like clearly, again, like I think we talked about this last week, and I can't remember with who. I guess with Area and Naria, I was saying how it feels like there's a lot of notes somewhere about this world and how things work, and they just couldn't fit it all in a complex, like fully fleshed out way within the amount of time they had.
It's no Planet with economy of storytelling,
and I mean it's a storytelling style I don't hate. I play me some FromSoft games, but it doesn't work when you are doing that with characters who are such a loaded metaphor. You don't get to set that over there.
Yeah, I think that background world that we're not necessarily going to explore creates a sense of like depth to Gaia that's really nice. But yeah, like you said, with these more loaded metaphors, you kind of have to be willing to explore them, or just don't include them. Otherwise, it's just a very shallow. Look, prejudice is bad, you know.
I know we included.
It is. They're not wrong.
It is.
Prejudice is bad. See
so
all
shallow.
of these non-prejudiced, all these privileged characters grappling with the idea that prejudice is bad.
Well, and so many of them are lawmakers, but has Vaughn felt the need to do anything on Merle's behalf throughout his entire life with this kinghood that he has now?
I do sort of get the sense that Finalia was more equitable, because like when the story starts, he's good friends with those like dog people who they meet when they first get to Gaia in like the first episode, and the guy who hooks Folken up with Vaughn, and they seem to be like a traveling caravan or something, and they seem to be on good terms with everybody. So I get the sense that Finalia's better about that stuff than maybe the rest of the world is, especially Zybok, the fascist empire.
Very subtle. I know we put this at the end of the notes, but I do think that all of this is why nobody can remember a good goddamn about what happens in Escaflowne, because the plot elements are either very by-the-book fantasy in some ways or kind of rushed, and it only holds together because of the characters and how they feel.
Right, yeah, no, just everything happens so much that by the end of an episode, it feels like you've watched 5 episodes worth of plot, and the only thing that really sticks with you is how the characters reacted to it and how the characters felt in the name of these plot developments. But like what actually happened is not as clear. Like, it's easier to remember, like, Hitomi was dating Alan, and then Alan was a jerkbag, and then got really angsty because he knew Hitomi was going to break up with him for Vaughn, and then like it's so much easier to remember that than like all of the surrounding plot developments that were going on at the same time.
Yeah, fate alteration, something or other. Yeah, and which, I mean, to be fair, that is kind of the theme of Escaflowne. Feelings are the most powerful. So, in its own awkward way, it forwarded that idea by having everything happen so much.
Yeah, I think you mentioned, like, you were talking in our chat about how Escaflowne has a beautiful ending, and just don't think about it too hard.
No, if I think about it for more than 60 seconds, it kind of falls apart, but it is beautiful in that, like, wonderful, messy, adolescent metaphor way that I think good isekai are. So yeah, I just won't worry too much about the plot.
I was talking with Dorothy, actually, and she pointed out that so often shoujo isekai are coming of age stories and stories about accepting responsibility and growing, and so the more modern boom of male isekai is about escapism, wish fulfillment, and getting all the things you deserved that you didn't get.
Yep.
So
I was thinking about that too, so I'm glad you brought it up.
They very much, the shoujo ones very much start off as trying to escape, and there's a couple of different routes that they tend to take. But usually they start off with a girl who wants to escape something or some way. And then when she's drawn into this other world, she's needs to learn. It functions the way that through her experiences in the other world, she is now able to accept her responsibilities.
Right.
She had when she went back. And there are also series where she chooses to stay in that other world, like Red River or From Far Away.
Spoilers, God. I'm kidding, they're 20 years old.
Sorry, I spoiled these 20-year-old shoujo series. I mean, so there are a couple of different routes for the series to take. But they do generally have the theme of, but those are usually like she has a better, like, fits in better in this other world after she was just an ordinary girl in her own world, but in this other world she finds responsibilities and connections that she had in the other world. But yeah, no, Escaflowne is very much like learning acceptance and responsibility in your own life, and then coming back with the lessons that you've learned. I know that, like, it does have echoes of, like, almost a Joseph Campbell sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
How so?
Yeah, can you expand on that? So, like,
the monomyth is, and the monomyth has a lot of limitations. I'm not a big Joseph Campbell stan. I went through that phase in college.
Didn't we all?
But so the idea of the monomyth is that it usually starts off with the hero descending into the underworld for some reason. And then in the underworld, he meets all of these archetypal figures. He usually, like, refuses the call. He has to refuse the call at some point. Hitomi being like, I can't do this. I don't want to fortune tell anymore. Mm-hmm. My memory of this is approximate. I remember bits and pieces.
Sure.
I don't remember the full cycle. And then
no, that's fine. I just figured for folks at home to get a little bit of a better idea of, like, what Escaflowne is kind of toying with as far as archetypes go.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, it descends into the underworld, or goes into this otherworldly sort of realm. And then through his experiences, I use he because Campbell uses he because he was kind of sexist.
Well, and most of the old myths do focus on dudes. So.
Yeah, but so anyway, so then he becomes victorious after hitting rock bottom, and reemerges back into his life with these new skills, which is very much like Escaflowne. Fushigi Yugi has a lot of shades of that.
Right, and also that element of, well, not these kind of stories usually cut off before them, but like with those monomyths, there's always that element too of like with the end of Lord of the Rings, where the hero comes back, but they don't fit in the comfortable home place anymore. Like they are too changed.
Yeah, and I would say I think that Escaflowne doesn't necessarily go that route. Like, Hitomi comes home and, like, she's definitely changed, but she says, I'm doing fine, and she seems to be, she's more aware of herself and the people around her, and so she's kind of, like, ready to take that next step as into adulthood.
Mm-hmm. I'm just so proud of her.
I know, she's such a good character. She
really is.
She continues to just take no shit in a way that's, like, I don't think she comes across as, like, a stereotypical... I shouldn't even say stereotypical, because I like tough, angry girl characters who take no shit, but Hitomi is not that while still, like, standing up for herself, and I like that, because I think you do tend to see extremes, especially in sort of fantastical media, and so the fact that, Hitomi is conflicted and, doesn't want to go out and fight, but at the same time, like, she refuses to be put on the sidelines. Alan is such a douchebag, and she puts up with none of it. She's like, he's like, what? He was like, and then you ran off without telling me. She's like, I don't really think that's any of your business, and now I'm going home by myself, so leave me alone. Vaughn has that whole thing about, like, oh, I have to protect you, and she's like, I didn't ask you to do that.
Yeah.
So I really like Hitomi. I think she has a good character arc while she comes into the story already kind of great, you know what I mean? And then, but she still has a good arc and grows as a person and has these kind of ups and down moments, and she's a wonderful protagonist.
I will say she does kind of get stuck interpreting Vaughn's emotions for us in that one stretch there. That becomes her role in the plot, because she's kind of sorted her own feelings mostly. So there's a lot of her, like, standing on the edges of balconies and telling us how Vaughn is feeling many, many miles away. Although I do like that that kind of thing this show is playing with, where she's talking about how, no, you're not actually concerned about protecting me. Basically, I am a convenient excuse for you to go to war and enjoy it in the name of protecting hearth and home and helpless women.
Yeah, that's an idea that comes up. I mean, it's been floating there from pretty much the beginning, but we see it so much in this last stretch, this idea of, like, war being about protecting, but how that's less an ideal and more of an excuse and then this is something that comes up in a few other mecha series. It comes up in Star Driver, and I really like what they do there. And one day we're gonna have a Star Driver watch along. Damn it,
we will.
But this this kind of like this, the fine line between, like, protecting or keeping someone safe and controlling them. And this idea of, like, because these are characters with giant robots and power, and there are people who don't have that power, and, like, how do you wield that in such a way that you're helping people, you're not just, like, manipulating them or overriding their personal will. And I think Escaflowne spends a lot of time in this last arc talking about that, and does a pretty good job not letting the characters be controlling D-bags. Like, again, I think the fact that Hitomi reacts immediately sourly to Alan, the other disaster sibling, as I lovingly call them,
oh God, they're a hot mess.
is very indicative of how the show feels about those behaviors. Like, it's very much a show that is coming down against these toxic masculine ideas about controlling others and using aggression to like fighting conflict with conflict, violence literally begetting violence, is very much a part of these final episodes, and that willingness to like stop, take a breath, and be honest with each other. The thing I kept kind of writing in my notes, and I went on a minor tweet rant about this the other day too, is the show I think does a very smart job of showing how the characters' feelings are valid, but they're expressing them in really unhealthy or damaging ways, and like the necessity to deal directly with those feelings without the toxic response to them.
Right.
Which is Alan, my trash bag, who sucks, but I still like him somehow.
Apparently he sucks more in one language track than the other.
Yeah. So I was thinking, like, while Isaac was sort of talking about gravity while watching people fighting, I was thinking about, I saw a clip from Gundam Char's counterattack, where Char was hollering about how he wants to destroy the Earth because people are weighed down by gravity. And then a girl just like is so moved by this that she stands up and says, "Gravity, that's why my parents fight." And then she instantly goes from being on Amuro's side to threatening to shoot Amuro because he was attacking Char, because Tomino. But anyway,
That's beautiful.
But I was thinking about that and sort of like mentally comparing that to Dornkirk's whole thing about like how everyone who was fighting was also like being weighed down by gravity. But the thing is that Gundam is always so like, we're gonna fight to end war. Like, this, like, at least the ones that I have seen have been like, this is gonna be the war to end all wars. We're gonna come down to the Earth and beat up the Empire, and that's gonna end war forever. And Escaflowne had characters saying that, and then they were like, no, that's stupid. You end fighting by stopping fighting.
I will say Double O tried to interface with that idea. It did it bad because of how it was forced to pace itself in 225 episode seasons, but it tried.
The Sunrise Effect.
Anyway, it was one season that was 25 episodes long, and it was a tragedy. Sure did enjoy. Anyway, go on.
But yeah, like, just sort of, I don't know, I don't have any grand conclusions that I drew from this, but just sort of the, parallels and echoes, and...
Yeah. It does get in... Sorry.
I don't know when Char's counterattack came out. I think it was the 80s. But, like, Escaflowne is roughly contemporaneous with Gundam Wing, which also had, like, fighting to end fighting sort of plot threads and silliness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of... Boy, there sure is some extremely overt Hiroshima imagery in this last spat of episodes.
Yes, that too.
Yep, and about atrocities and the effects and lots of bloody battlefields. Like, I don't think
Crusaders. There were Crusaders.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it's necessarily all successful. I think a lot of the talk with Dornkirk and all of that, everything that is not about Hitomi having her own personal breakthrough, is kind of word salad bullshit, if well-meaning word salad bullshit.
True.
But I do think it's driving toward something. I think I lost my train of thought there. But
that's all right. Well, no, Escaflowne is, I think, very, very explicitly like anti-fascist, anti-war, anti-violence, and it's kind of, but I think it's one of those shows where the creators are smart enough to know that it's not quite that simple. So they're trying to come down hard on this stuff because it is worth saying. And maybe a few years ago I might have been like, oh, it's a little heavy-handed. And now I'm like, no, we have actual fascists in power again, so we need to actually be really heavy-handed about this shit, turns out. Mm-hmm. But anyway, but I do think that there's that kind of that element where like Dornkirk's like, oh, the love of these these people. I mean, not just Alan, not just Vaughn and Hitomi, but also like Alan and his sibling. I think this idea of like, this honest, open communication, like desire to help each other, has stopped this war. But then there's kind of that sense of like, but for how long? People are fickle, and there's all these conflicting desires that are going to keep kind of clashing against each other. And so there's this understanding at the end that like, no, there's probably not going to never ever be another skirmish on Gaia ever again. But Vaughn is taking the steps needed to approach things from the perspective of, we're going to focus on personal agency and kindness and kind of try to get back to that compassion rather than immediately jumping to, well, I've got to kill them or they're going to kill me. So it so much happened so quickly there at the end. I finished the penultimate episode, and was like, how are they going to wrap this up in 25 minutes?
With feelings?
And the answer is with feelings and with kind of an understanding of like, we don't have a 100% good answer, but this is a start.
I will say, how much bullshit is it that like, Folken gets his redemptive death for all the war crimes what he did, and that's good. That's a good thing to do with his character, even if Joji Nakata made me feel sad because he's good at acting. But Dornkirk gets to...
I'm so mad I couldn't get the subs to work on the app.
Aww.
I had to have Vic Mignogna do the synthetic speech.
I'm sorry, Caitlin. They're there. They're there.
Moment of silence. But meanwhile, Dornkirk does die, but it has no effect because he immediately gets to come back as a sage, wise, neutral ghost, and like, fuck this guy in particular, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, he kind of seemed like he just needed to come back to exposit at Hitomi a little bit, because he doesn't actually do anything. He's just like, with my death, this machine took over, and now there's nothing we can do.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of watches it unfold. Let's talk a little bit about Folken, though, I think, since we're there.
Mm-hmm.
Because last week I said he kind of sucked, and then I got 2 episodes into this stretch and went, oh, damn, I like him again.
It's so, like, my smart brain with good thoughts is like, you're still a war criminal, sir, and I'm not sure any of this saying, well, I'm really sorry, though, here's some intel makes up for that, but my heart meat and my love of Joji Nakata's voice and acting ability is like, oh, no, but he's dead, and I'm sad, and he had a feeling, and he's sorry, though.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and this is one of the things I like about Escaflowne, I think all of the characters are flawed in really good ways, because, like, yes, I'm sad about Folken's death. Yes, I thought the part where you basically find out that one of the main reasons he decided, like, I need to work to end conflict on this planet is because he didn't want his brother to ever have to be forced into the situation he's been forced into at this moment. They have that wonderful flashback where Vaughn's like, well, isn't it mean to kill dragons? And Folken's like, yeah, it is. You're right.
Yeah.
So good.
Oh.
And
Sweet brothers.
like, his heel turn on Dornkirk is a little abrupt, but understandable. And I think that idea of like, I still want to make this happen, but you have to have actual regard for human life. Like, you can't just be all reason and logic and ends justify the means. But at the same time, he has no regard for his own life, and he still tries to resolve violence with violence. Like, his answer at the end is, I'm just going to protect everyone by killing Dornkirk. And surprising nobody, it doesn't work, because that's the world of Escaflowne.
Because irony and luck.
So his ending is really tragic because it actually doesn't accomplish anything. Yep. He's kind of a cautionary tale, albeit a very sympathetic one.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm willing to give him his redemption arc.
I'm not saying, I think they redeemed him. I do think ultimately they didn't. How do I put this? His character is made sympathetic without them agreeing with his methods. Yes. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
I think he has the best of intentions all the way through. And I think he makes the wrong choices most of the time. Which again kind of comes back to that idea of like, all these characters have these valid feelings that they are expressing in unhealthy ways.
It's definitely not a Folken did nothing wrong situation.
Oh, no. He did so many things wrong.
I'm sure if Escaflowne came out today, there would definitely be a Folken did nothing wrong meme.
Mm-hmm.
But Folken did many things wrong. And once he realized that he did many things wrong, he tried to do things right.
Yeah, and again, I do think
he was always trying to do things right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, he was always trying to do things right, but when he saw how wrong he was initially, he was like, maybe this will be the right thing. Mm-hmm. And it was not entirely correct, but he tried.
But it does seem like a smart move having him die, because like if you let that character live, there's just no way to balance out the magnitude of all the shit he did, even meaning well. So like I appreciate it as an arc.
This is tangential, but I think it's really cool how like you see Folken in Vaughn's flashbacks, and you see the Folken like all the way back to before he went to fight the dragon, and he looks like Vaughn, and you see him in the now, and he looks completely different. And I think it's cool that how the flashbacks to varying points, you can kind of see the evolution of his look. I don't know. It's not really a super relevant point, but I thought that was really cool.
I see what you're saying too, because it also kind of reflects his different sort of worldviews and positioning. Because he looks more like Vaughn when he and Vaughn are kind of in agreement, and then they split, and then he starts to look like Teardrop Bowie, and that's what I call him.
This is amazing.
And then he comes back.
He truly is the man who sold the world.
Yeah.
Like, points off Escaflowne, though, for having him wake up and reacting to his prosthetic arm as though he has, like, had some terrible part of his humanity ripped out. Like,
I mean, if I woke up and didn't have my arm anymore, I'd probably freak out, too. I think that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, yes, character-wise, framing-wise, it felt a little bit like, oh no, he has become mechanical and less human because he has taken this part of Zybok's fascist empire into himself, and the show is a little shaky on how it wants to frame science as, like, it wants it to be a neutral tool that can be used for evil, but, like, it's evil science some of the time, though.
It's constantly used for evil, so it's hard to get the neutral element that they're going for there.
I don't know. Yeah, feelings are good, science is bad. That's not a good message to take away, because that's how you get anti-vaxxers. But did they actually say who Dornkirk was, like which Isaac was? Because if they did in these last few episodes, I missed it, and I want it to be known.
I feel like they are implying maybe that it was Newton, because Hitomi goes back to class and they're like, he invented gravity, but did you know he was also into all this alchemic shit?
Well, there was no gravity.
Yeah, no, there was no gravity before Isaac Newton. I don't know if you knew that.
You mean. Well, and what did I call this in my notes? Newton's third law of emotions. The idea of like conflict breeding conflict, and like Folken kills Dornkirk and then is immediately murdered because of the like very literal equal and opposite reaction. Like, yeah, that's definitely the Isaac they are calling back to in this particular instance for sure.
Yeah, no, I like that was that. It's one of those things where like. It is widely, like, I think it is one of the more popular spoilers that Dornkirk is Isaac Newton. And, like, during the like, previous stretches, Jared had, like, sat down with me for a couple of episodes, and, like, when they showed a little bit about him, his life on Earth, he goes, oh, he's Isaac Newton. So I just wasn't sure if they ever actually said it.
No, it's never made explicit, but
okay.
It's there.
It's heavily enough implied that anime fandom has over the years picked up on it. It is not a secret.
It's good. Do we want to take a minute to talk about your trash bag, D? We had dedicated a full 10 minutes to mine, and I feel like Alan deserves the same respect.
The other disaster sibling, yes. It's very, for our listeners who have been watching this the first time through, watching it a second time, some of the early episodes are hilarious because there's one episode that is like two parallel storylines, and one of them is Folken telling Dilandau not to set fire to a village, and then he does. And the other one is Ares telling Alan not to lead Milerna on, and he does. And it's like, oh yeah, you guys are definitely related. This is so obvious in retrospect.
That is the shit I would love to see explored. It just, like, fucking, they're both so...
I think they're both characters who we're supposed to see a trajectory for redemption at the end of this, but we don't quite get there. And I guess that's what fanfiction is for, because I do think both of those arcs are really interesting. I keep circling back to this idea about, like, it's understandable where you're coming from, but you're being a shit about it. And I think that's very true of Alan. Like, Escaflowne does a good job of being like, this is why he is the way he is. Like, his dad abandoned him, he lost his family, like, he keeps losing people that he cares about. So Hitomi gets kidnapped, he freaks out, and then he becomes a controlling asshole. And it's like, but then Escaflowne is also very good about going, no, that's not an excuse. You're still being an asshole.
Yeah. Hitomi calling him out, like, don't control me. Like, screw off.
Yeah, like, again, they dated for about 12 minutes because he was awful, and Hitomi was not going to put up with it. And it's, Vrai, a couple episodes back, you were like, oh, you are to Alan as I am to Saionji, and I think that is continuing to be legitimate, because I think that's another show that does a good job of showing how people get to be the way they are without excusing the behaviors. And so, yeah, I think we end up in a place with Alan where I sent you guys a message a couple episodes in where I was like, oops, Alan sucks. What a roller coaster I've been on. And then, but it feels like the series always wants to kind of redeem him and just doesn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Because he's so locked into this, like, knightly role. And so the best they can come up with is I'm going to keep saying sibling, because I'm just going to treat Delina in a sort of gender neutral place, because the series doesn't quite know what they want to do with the character either. His sibling shows up, and it's like the first time they don't really respond to him at all, right? They don't recognize him, they don't remember him. Next time he sees him, they're on a battlefield, like, trying to kill one of his buddies. And I think it's like the only time in the series where he actually takes the first step towards helping someone or trying to be kind to someone without them doing it first. Like, beforehand, it was always like he had no interest in people until they started expressing an interest in him, right? I talked about that last week. Like, as soon as somebody's like, I like you, he's like, oh, I guess I like you back. That's how that works. And so I think we're kind of supposed to see in the fact that he protects somebody who actually needs protecting in that moment, rather than, just trying to be, like, manipulative and controlling. I think we're supposed to see that as, like, the first step towards him becoming less of a shit, like, realizing that he really just wanted a family, not a girlfriend. Like, he even says that about Hitomi. Like, I think I always just kind of saw her as a sister. Then that fanfic machine showed up and things got weird. So, but he still sucks. He just sucks less once he's like, I want to do right by my sibling this time. I don't want to, like, leave them for the wolves, basically.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer at the end of the day, honestly, because I do think that Alan could be a better person, like, very easily, and the show just actively resists giving him any moment of self-realization, to the point where I could buy a universe where that does indeed become the first sign of him becoming a better person. I could also easily see a terrible dark fic where he puts his sibling in a room and makes sure they never go anywhere, and makes sure that they are the perfect pretty princess that he remembered from when he was a child, and immediately starts dating Milerna again.
Yes, that is the darkest timeline that you have just described.
I really liked how Milerna's conversation with him at the end, though.
Yeah, let's talk about Milerna too, for sure. I think that's kind of a good place to spin too, because I think maybe Alan and Hitomi never really get that moment where he goes, yeah, you're right, I was being a dick. Like, I think that's part of the thing you're talking about, Vrai, is, like, the fact that you can so easily see that darkest timeline, is that we never quite get that moment where he realizes he's been awful.
Which is a shame.
Which is important. And like you said, like, I do think this is a character that it could easily move on to a path of being, like, a good dude, but he's not there yet. But I think that scene with Milerna is also perhaps a step in the right direction, in that he kind of honors her requests, and the two of them sort of separate on cordial terms, with her being like, no, I don't want to rely on you or anyone anymore. I want to try to be more independent.
Yeah, I like that scene, and I still like Dryden and Milerna. I think they're really cute.
Yeah, I think they could work in the long term.
I guess. I thought Dryden leaving because, like, he felt like he needed to be of use to her, and since he wasn't, like, deserving of her love. I thought that was a weird scene, and I wasn't really sure what the point was.
Yeah.
I think that's why I forget Dryden. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's why I keep forgetting he's a character.
He doesn't really get a full arc, which is too bad, because I think he could have been a really good character. I like him. I think he and Milerna could be good for each other, honestly. But after...
I'm not sure I like him. I haven't decided yet.
I think
I'm on the fence.
He's a little smarmy. Don't get me wrong.
He's constantly got this, like, I
But
always get what I want
also, you like Alan,
attitude.
so...
I do, but he's also a trash bag. Like, I'm not going to pretend he's not a trash bag.
I'm just saying.
Listen.
Call
he
out
responded
post
to
for
a
D.
breakup. He responded to a breakup by putting on his nice leather pants, sitting in a room with his pet owl in the dark, and draining a bottle of wine. I like that character.
While talking
I'm sorry.
to his dead dad.
Call out post for D, likes Alan, but does not like Dryden, even though they are very similar.
I don't think I'm supposed to like Alan, and I think I don't think I'm supposed to approve of what Alan does. I think I'm supposed to approve of what Dryden does, and I think that's why I'm less certain that I like Dryden than that I like Alan, because I like that Alan is so, as one of my Twitter followers pointed out, brilliantly flawed, like really a very well constructed character.
I feel like with Dryden, it's supposed to. The series builds itself in a little back door with Vaughn and Hitomi, where it's like, I'm going home now, but we can reach each other anytime as long as we know each other's thoughts. And it's like, all right, fanfickers, go on, do your thing. And they did.
We'll talk on the internet every day.
And
we'll
I think
exchange phone call. We'll exchange emails.
Absolutely, our feelings will always remain the same and as passionate as they are when we're right here next to each other. Long distance is hard, kids. But I think it wants to be that with Milerna and Dryden, with this implication that the reason they need to break it off is because it was hasty and they're not grown to the point as people where they can make this potentially good relationship work. But it kind of fumbles it in execution.
It's so fast. It's
Yeah.
like one scene. It's like, oh, they're fine, and it's like, no, they're not. Dryden's leaving because he feels like he doesn't deserve her yet.
Which he doesn't.
Right, yeah.
No,
to be
he
clear.
doesn't. To be fair, no, he does not.
Like, it's a conclusion I buy, but it's too rushed to be believable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing I like best about it is where it kind of places Milerna, because he's like, I'm going to leave, and she's like, can't promise I'll be waiting for you. And then she has that really good scene with Alan, where you get the sense that she really wants to kind of move into, like, rather than... Milerna is a character, we've talked about this, like, she definitely has these other goals and interests and is like she seems like a very capable and awesome character, lady. But she personally keeps kind of latching on and defining herself by her relationship with a guy. So I do think that the end being like Dryden leaves and she doesn't immediately jump to somebody else. She's like, no, Alan, we're done. And again, to Alan's credit, he's not a controlling asshole. He goes, okay, cool.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we're done.
Baby
Fair
steps.
enough. Yeah.
It's like the end of the Scott Pilgrim movie, which had many issues, don't get me wrong, but like the part where Knives looks Scott in the eye and says, Scott, I'll always love you, but I'm too good for you. And just turns around and walks away.
I have realized that it's weird for you, a 25-year-old, to be trying to date me, the 17-year-old in your band.
Which, I mean, are the exact ages of Milerna and Alan, so well done.
What I want in my heart, and if this fanfic exists, I haven't found it or it's been lost to time, is for Milerna to go out on the road as, like, a roadside traveling doctor and to take Alan's sibling with her to be her assistant, and they become friends, and it's good.
I would be down for that fanfic.
Yeah.
Right? Be the change you want to see in the world. That sounds
Transformative
cute.
fiction.
I think Milerna has to run the entirety of Asturia right now, though, because her dad's super sick, and her older sister, who is cool, and we've never talked about Ares. I like Ares. She's a very minor figure, but she's like the one person in the story who is completely immune to Alan, and they end up actually having kind of a great relationship because of that.
She's the pragmatic sister.
Yeah, well, she's like the one person he's kind of open and honest with, which is again, kind of neat. Like, the fact that she doesn't really like him makes him more willing to, like, tell her stuff. Like, she's the only person he says, my sister came back. That's weird.
Yeah, she's kind of in that same camp as dude whose name I can't remember who pilots Alan's ship. They are there.
Gaddis.
They never get any development.
Gaddis
is great.
Mm-hmm.
They're both.
I wish Gaddis got more development.
I think they're both characters who, again, you get the sense there's backstory there, and we just are not privy to it because there's too much else going on.
So much stuff.
She's one where I think you could pull some subtext out, though, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
See, why didn't Escaflowne get the treatment where they have like 10 different slice of life alternate universe spin-offs?
Well, there were light novels. I don't know if they're just retellings of the story or what. If they suck as much as the shonen manga, maybe it's best we never know.
It looks like they're just a retelling.
Oh.
Okay.
There is a shoujo manga, in addition to the 2-volume one, that has it's a bunch of different artists doing 15 mini stories related to the series. And I don't know anything else about it. That's what's on the wiki. But
that would
that
satisfy
could
my
maybe
desire.
do something.
Yeah, we need that sequel series because there's so much, and I had not realized that the ending of Escaflowne was contentious. Like,
Really?
it was so obviously, like, as a kid. Well, I'm a sucker for bittersweet endings. First of all, I like the long distance finale where it's like, well, we're separated, but you're still an important memory to me, and I'm gonna move on with my life, but like, I'm gonna think back on you fondly, kind of thing. That ending has always stuck with me, even if I couldn't remember anything about the plot that led up to it. And so I think I just always assumed that it was like accepted that it was a good ending. Bebop is a good ending, Utena is a good ending, Escaflowne is a good ending. And then I very recently found out that is not the case, and a lot of people did not like that ending. But I will stand for it. So
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, in my heart, I think they're really cute. I would be down to imagine a future where Hitomi and Vaughn got together again, like, as adults. But also, I don't want to see that dramatized in the show, if that makes sense, because it feels so Harry Potter epilogue, which I hate. Like, I hate those series that are like, and everyone married their destined partner who has been named in the course of the story, and they all got the jobs they wanted, and there was no conflict ever again, and this is all completely counter to those themes we finished up with the nicer ending 10 pages ago, but we need to resolve all of these things on page and leave no room for fanfiction. Go.
And then retcon it in our play that will come out 10 years later that reads very much like a fanfic. But this is not a Harry Potter podcast, and we are not going to get into that.
Nope. But like that impetus, I really hate the tie up all the loose ends. Because, like, they left...
Babies Ever After?
Yeah. They left that door open of our hearts can always reach each other. That is for you, the fans. But the main impetus of the narrative is to wrap up Hitomi's story and, as Gaia as this sort of green world of adolescence where you go in and you are changed and you come back to the normal world. That's the narrative supersedes your shipper feels. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I sent out a tweet that was basically like, if you don't like the ending of Escaflowne, you can huff my shorts, Daryl. And I had a lot of people respond to it that were like, I used to hate it, and then as I got older, I really appreciated it. And I was like, okay, so, and I think part of it is just there is that kind of knee-jerk desire for, like, the perfect, sweet ending. And then you go, oh, wait, no, thematically speaking, and, like, as far as this character's arc goes, this makes more sense. I also think it fits, like, when Hitomi gets, swept away to Gaia, part of it is because she's sort of grappling with the fact that this guy she likes is moving away and she might never see him again. And, do I have the courage to tell him that I like him before he leaves? And she turns out she's not really that into Amano. But that still plays out in her story on Gaia, where she, becomes more aware of herself and the feelings of others and more certain in herself. But then she also still has to deal with the fact that, no, he is quote unquote moving away. Like, I still do have to deal with that separation and, like, where you go from there. So yeah. I like it. I think it's more true to the kind of intense, passionate relationships of high school that very rarely, actually, like, lead to marriage and being together forever and ever. So I think it's very well done.
Yeah.
Even if there are some loose ends with some of the side characters that I wish they'd had more time to tie up. Overall, I'm very fond of the ending.
Yeah, just to make the reference pool 4 for 4. Like, when I was 15 and I watched Gankuzo for the first time, the ending really bummed me out, and I kind of hated it. But as an adult, I'm really glad it didn't end the way I wanted it to when I was a teenager. So it would have been such a nightmare.
Or it's like people who are mad about how Paradise Kiss ended and thought that Yukari and George
haven't read it, not
Oh!
listening.
Sorry.
Would like to read it.
Okay,
Should I take off my headset?
Yeah, I know what you mean, though. And
Yes.
In Parakiss's case, all you have to do is wait long enough, and each successive version will slowly erode the effects of the original story. Yay! I'm so mad. That article is coming.
Yeah. No. It's okay, Dee. We're not going to go farther.
Okay, thank you. Because I'll take off my headphones if I need to. It's a series I actually do want to read, so I do care about. Normally, I don't get too fussed about spoilers, but this one I would like to not know how it ends. Just
It has similar, honestly, kind of similar themes to Escaflowne, but very different, like everything else. So
then I will probably be into it because I am into Escaflowne. I still don't, even after this rewatch, I'm still not sure if I would slide it onto my list of like best beloved titles ever. But it's right there on the edge because I do like it an awful lot.
it's really good, and it's just like it's got so much going for it, because it's not just like a really good, like, well done story and characters, but it's just visually, honestly, visually. Watching this whole thing, Asturia, incredibly gorgeous. Like the mecha design, I'm not a big mecha person, but every time the Escaflowne changes into a dragon, it's super cool. Every time, like, Vaughn, like, sprouts his wings and, like, grabs hold of Hitomi and flies away, I'm like, hell yeah. It's just, like, it is not a perfect series, but it does what it does well. It does so well.
Yeah, I think its strengths not only outweigh its flaws, but I think its flaws are, especially given that it was made 20 years ago, its flaws are fairly easy to overlook. Does that make sense? Like, like we talked about in Fushigi Yugi about how, like, overall we agreed that the series has a lot of value, but some of those flaws are so dramatic that, like, it totally makes sense if they're deal breakers for folks. Like they can really affect your enjoyment of the story. And I think Escaflowne, I don't think it tries to do quite as much as Fushigi Yugi does. Like, to Fushigi Yugi's credit, I think it's a very ambitious, messy story. But I also think that those flawed elements aren't quite as in your face and, like, intense deal breakers for folks. So
Right.
it makes it I think it makes it an easier one to recommend to people, even going, yeah, it was made 20 years ago, but it's still a lot of fun. So check it out.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like Fushigi Yugi soars higher and crashes harder in some ways than Escaflowne, like you said.
Yes.
I think so. Yeah, Escaflowne never hit me as hard in the feels as Fushigi Yugi does. Even if it is overall a much more polished series, obviously, like, and like a story told by more experienced storytellers.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I will, and like it has that benefit of the fact that it's so vague about some of its themes. Like, the reason I love Dilandau so much, and I really don't have that same attachment to Noriko, is that Dilandau's story is buried under about 6 layers of coding rather than explicitly talking about the thing up front, so its fuck-ups are easier to take and fix.
Yeah, there's a lot of Escaflowne runs on subtext and, like, implicit stuff a bit more, I would say.
Yeah,
for sure.
But it's just one of those dangers, or risks, I guess, of media that really wants to be overtly progressive and tackle these sensitive issues, is that if you succeed, you did something inimitable, but if you crash, oh boy, you are going to age fast and poorly.
Yep.
Yeah. Which I guess brings us to the question we do have to ask: is Escaflowne feminist?
Damn it, Steve.
Podcast over.
Sorry.
I'm gone.
Goodbye.
We just hear a crash as Vry's computer flies out the window. No, I am kidding. Obviously, that is a reductive question we do not ask here on Chatty AF. Except that one time Caitlin did to troll Amelia on our
but also
on our Miss
sincerely.
Hokusai podcast.
But also sincerely.
But yeah, well, I guess on that note, like, not is Escaflowne a feminist, but like, would you recommend this to a? I mean, I would say it's pretty obvious that overall we're all pretty positive on this series. Like during the rewatch, I don't think any of us like surprised ourselves by souring to a show that we had liked. Like it sounds like we all still like it. Mm-hmm. Would you recommend it to a feminist friend?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think it definitely comes with some caveats up front, and that, you know, that overall sentiment that if you pick at this show, it is going to unravel, which I don't mean to say, and therefore don't critique it, but that you kind of have to engage with it on a certain level just to make it work at all. You have to be willing to sincerely go with those emotions of feeling all of the things. Everything happens so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes there's this idea that, like, how do I say this in a way that's not like stop criticizing things, how dare you? The sense of like nitpicking plot points, which, fine, you can criticize plot points, but like when they don't actually matter for the overall story. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like kind of getting lost,
sort of
like losing the forest for the trees.
The
kind
cinema
of thing.
sin sort of approach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
criticism.
exactly.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
And I think that does kind of a disservice. I think that as like an audience member, I think that you're kind of depriving yourself of an experience if you take that approach to stories. And I think that Escaflowne is very much a story about the power of feelings, but I also think like that emotionality is important. That's why stories stick with us. Like we can't remember the plot, but we like this show. We remembered liking the show. We remembered these characters, and I think sometimes that gets swept under the rug, so that we can all like poke fun at like the Fate Alteration Machine and the Lux Soldiers, and yeah, it's ridiculous, but it serves a broader purpose of this like adolescent narrative and these characters, working through a lot of toxic ideas and coming out the other side better. And I think that's good and has a lot of value.
Yeah, and I think there's still plenty of like criticism one could make about, I don't think these emotions sold in this place. I don't think this arc ended in a place where the character fully completed their growth as a person. Yeah. But that's not I think that too often gets lumped in with kind of taking an aloof approach to the nuance. The magical word that we're always approaching a half-life toward on this show, nuance. Mm-hmm. I'm not word good today.
No. I think you caught it. I think that's the point. Yeah. But overall, I am fond of it. So yeah, I guess recommendation. Rewatchalong success. Well done, gang. We have knocked out another classic 90s isekai together. It was fun. It wasn't quite as epic as our last one, which was so many episodes long.
10 episodes.
Yeah, that one, we got to the end of that one and I felt as if I had been on my own isekai journey and come out the other side.
Yeah.
Which,
so long. You know what? It was a great bonding experience for the three of us.
Yeah,
it was.
I think it brought us closer together.
I am incredibly glad that we did that. Power
of friendship, and clearly doing Escaflowne will only strengthen our bonds. It's that gravity. Remember that gravity.
Yeah, the solution is gravity.
Yeah, we'll have to do another one at some point too.
Oh heck yeah.
Well, that we are at the hour though, and I have kind of said a lot of the concluding things. Was there anything else y'all wanted to mention here at the end?
Good show. Shame it's locked behind Funimation's nonsense right now. Oh, also send me your Dilandau fan art if it exists. I'm dying. It's a desert. I'm dying.
Okay, Vrai needs Dilandau fan art. Get on that, dear listeners. Save them from this.
All right, now we can do housekeeping.
All right.
Okay. So that brings us to the end of our Escaflowne Rewatchalong. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Chatty AF. If you like what you heard, tell your friends about us. And if you really like what you heard, we'd love it if you'd head over to www.patreon.com/animefemist and become a patron for at least $1 a month. We have so many big, exciting plans in our future. The fundraising effort that we had in December was an amazing success, but there's still so much more we want to do. So, every donor on Patreon helps us get that much closer to paying our contributors more money and getting some actual full-time staff and expanding the content that we do to have, more reviews or more articles or what have you. So yeah, check us out. That's again www.patreon.com/animefeminist. Your support goes a long way towards helping us happen both in print and in your earbuds. If you're interested in more from the team and our contributors, you can check us out at www.animefeminist.com, on Facebook at AnimeFem, on Tumblr at AnimeFeminist, and on Twitter at AnimeFeminist. And that is the show. I should have come up with a witty phrase to say here at the end. Anybody got an idea? And then I'll say it, and then Peter can cut the part where I was trying to figure out what to say.
Feelings.
was
Remember,
there
everyone,
good...
feelings.
Okay, yeah. And that's the show. Harness the power of your feelings, AniFam, and we will catch you next time.